Hey there, entrepreneurs. My name is Sushant, and welcome to Trip Talks. This is the show where I interview successful e commerce entrepreneurs, business executives, and thought leaders, and ask them questions about their business story, and also dive deep into some of the strategies and tactics that they have used to start and grow their businesses. And today I'm really excited to welcome Monika Reti to the show. Monika is the founder of a company called Hipcooks. Hipcooks offers hands-on cooking classes for hungry home chefs and corporate clients looking for excitement and empowerment in the kitchen. And today I'm going to ask Monika a few questions about her entrepreneurial journey and some of the strategies and tactics that she has used to start and grow her business. So thank you so much for joining me today at Trip Talks, Monika. Really
Hi,
appreciate it.
it's a pleasure.
So interesting business. I usually interview e-commerce entrepreneurs, but this is a little bit different in the cooking and teaching business. Can you share a little bit about your business and what really motivated you to start this?
Sure. Well, I started Hipcooks 17 years ago, so it's been a long time with this journey, and it's the landscape has really changed a lot. When I first started 17 years ago, it was all in studio, so in location, hands-on cooking classes, and this is sort of at the advent of people doing Google searches and companies having websites. So I was able to grow the company very organically over time, but now the climate is really different, right? Especially as we are tentatively exiting the pandemic. During the pandemic, I switched to virtual, which we are still doing, and the landscape is just a bit changed.
So when you say it's changed, is it because we're coming out of the pandemic, there's less demand or there's more demand?
Sure. Well, it depends who you are, really. But I would say, of course, the demand for virtual has increased and continues to increase as our corporate clients, so this is really a B2B service, are looking to facilitate their teams coming together and doing something fun together in a healthy way. So where they were once doing offsites at Hipcooks in person, we're getting a whole host of clients nationally and even internationally who come join us for their team builders virtually. So that's a huge area where the landscape changed. We also then provide ingredients kits that we ship out in advance of class, right? So that took a lot of change and innovation. But I think even like pre-pandemic, in the 17 years that I've had the company, the landscape has changed a lot in terms of figuring out your SEO, figuring out what sort of products you can stack developmentally on your website, learning a bit more about marketing to customers. That whole landscape has just changed tremendously over the past couple of decades.
So it seems like even though this seems like more of a, it's really a cooking classes, but seems like you've really leveraged all the online technologies and online marketing and, really the virtual aspect of it. And that has really helped you to leverage and grow it.
Yeah, that really got us through the pandemic. I mean, before the pandemic, I grew all the brick and mortar locations to Hipcooks grew to 7 schools across the West Coast. But then slowly those shut down. We only have 2 brick and mortar locations now. But again, we've expanded our audience nationally and even globally worldwide through virtual.
So that's really interesting. I'm really curious to know when you started 17 years ago, was the motivation that you yourself are a great cook and you wanted to share that with other people, like that passion and excitement, or was it really
Nope,
just a
it's a
business
little
idea?
bit different than that. I didn't consider myself a great cook, although I love cooking and I love to share food. I'm an entrepreneur and a traveler, and I come from an international family. My mom is European, she's German. My dad is South American, he's Argentine. And I grew up in very sort of international groups and friend groups, and I've traveled my whole life. So one of the things that really inspires me is bringing people together and celebrating culture through food. So I think, naturally I'm an extrovert and I love the dinner party. So the concept of Hip Cooks, like how Hip Cooks got started really was informally as a supper club. So my background is in economics. I actually have a master's from the London School of Economics, and I was working in California as an econometrician at the time. So I gave dinner parties just as an outlet for fun and for creativity and for spontaneity, like bringing people together and having yummy food and wine together. So the business was born out of this notion that you can have people to dinner and have it be stress free with a little bit of advanced planning and some things that some cooking chops, some cooking knowledge.
Hmm.
You can throw together these beautiful meals, but more importantly, like sort of focus on the time that you're together at the table rather than like stressing out in the kitchen or becoming sort of bogged down with this notion of how do I, tell me how to cook something. Oh, great chef. I'm not like that at all. I want to instill confidence in people in the kitchen and sort of tap into their creativity as an outlet for fun. So I have a slightly different approach. And I think that resonated with a lot of people at the time.
So, I mean, I was going to ask you, do you still give great dinner parties, or is it now mostly?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, last night
Okay.
I made some quick Argentine empanadas and brought them to a dinner party. I also made some dessert because here in Oregon, the blackberries are in season. So I made a quick blackberry crumble with a homemade ginger ice cream, because you can, once you know certain basics, you can kind of riff off that theme. So I thought, oh, ice cream, but less sweet with fresh ginger. Much better, and much better than store-bought and fun to do at the dinner party. Easy.
That's that's awesome.
Mhm.
So when you started, it seems like you basically, you know, you were already throwing dinner parties. You added this idea and kind of grew organically. Like there wasn't at
Very,
the.
yeah, very organically and pretty slowly. So again, like Hip Cooks then just started as a supper club where people would come and it was pretty inexpensive at the time. It was just, $30. People would come, that would go towards ingredients and wine. And then everyone would help at the end and wash the dishes and all of that. So from there, it grew then to like a more formal school with an experience a little bit more like you'd expect. So with clients coming in from all over, finding us organically through Google searches, really, but then coming and having a little bit more of a structured experience, putting on an apron and cooking at a beautiful island and then sitting at the table and having a meal, but they don't have to wash dishes at the end like they used to.
So it's
So
almost.
Oh yeah, I was going to say, so I grew very slowly organically, but then I had the good luck after being in business for about 2 years and getting a lot of media attention because no one else was really quite doing what I was doing in the industry. So after 2 years, I did meet my angel investor who invested 500,000, and I grew the schools from 2 to 7 locations. That was our 5-year plan for the company.
Wow. So an angel investor invested 500,000. You must have had like a significant amount of revenue already to give some confidence to the angel investor that this is
I
something that's going to
did,
scale.
that's true. A lot of passion. Demand was bigger than supply, certainly. And he was also in the industry. So I think for him, as a manufacturer of cooking tools, saw that through our retail store, our partnership could also benefit his company. In a way, it was a method for his company to do a soft sell, right? Where my clients would use his products and fall in
Hmm.
love with them in an environment that had no hard sell
Hmm.
So I think that was also, a win-win for us.
So your business is almost like, so I would assume there's certain aspects to it. So one is, of course, as you said, there's like the teaching aspect of it, but then
Mhm.
there's also the experience, the social experience,
Very much
and
so, yeah. We focus a lot on that because I do feel that the act of cooking is a generous one, but you have to be host minded and sort of bringing people together and serving food, or creating food that's well balanced, but also again having opportunities to sit with your guests at a dinner party, bringing people together that wouldn't have met before, celebrating other cultures through food. I think all of that is a large part of our personality at Hip Cooks, and just more comes to the table than following a recipe to create a dish.
so now can you share a little bit about your business model itself? Like, I'm assuming that you've hired teachers
Absolutely.
who are basically the ones creating this experience and teaching.
Yeah.
And then one segment of your customer are, really just any individual or group of friends who want to have this experience, learn teaching and have this social experience. And then you said there's another segment of customers which is more corporate B2B kind of
Yeah.
where you're providing more of a team building experience and so forth. Can you share a little bit more about, who's your target audience, who's your ideal kind of person that you work with?
Sure. Well, first to go back to company structure. So yes, there is myself. There is also, I work closely with a graphic artist and photographer, to produce our content. People online are going to eat with their eyes first, so we've got to have some beautiful imagery. For all the locations, they need management, and I'm a pretty hands-off and structured boss. I don't want to manage my employees. So each location, so all 7 locations had its own manager in place, and that was 100% women staffed, which was also
Hmm.
really important to me. And I provided flexible jobs for those people. So again, no set schedule and no specific itinerary, but I did have achievable goals, great bonuses, a lot of little levers in place to have low turnover, high motivation, and high satisfaction, job satisfaction. And that's really paid off over time. Then each manager is in charge of staffing their studios with teachers, people that do shop prep,
Hmm.
and and then Hip Cooks also has a volunteer assistant program. So our students come in and volunteer time at Hip Cooks by helping with doing the dishes, right?
Hmm.
That I talked about before, that now the clients don't have to do. But we have a volunteer program for that. We trade them for classes. But what happens when we do that is those are the people that self-identify as Hip Cooks being their happy place, and
Hmm.
often they'll turn into new hires.
Hmm.
So it works really well where both employer and employee get to sort of try each other on and get to know each other before the whole onboarding process begins. And so I get a lot of good retention that way. To answer your question from the customer side, yes, of course, we have what's called public classes. And I'd probably say about 70% of our revenue is B2B in those group classes.
Hmm.
And those clients are anywhere from, Google, Amazon, Nike, Starbucks, Disney. We have a really long and impressive list of loyal clientele that keep coming back.
Hmm.
And our marketing to them is, though it's pretty, it's focused on a high return rate, which we do. So really, I try not to advertise Hip Cooks to keep our sort of homegrown, authentic personality. I feel like there's a certain value that customers put on to Hipcooks when they find us themselves organically. So I like that. But once they are our customers, then I will send them newsletters, like newsletter campaigns and recipes and different fun and interactive ways to sort of keep them in the fold and to have them then engage with us as customers on a repeated basis. And our return rate numbers are pretty high. So
Oh,
that's a priority for us.
that's really interesting. To me, it sounded like is it almost like a franchise model where
It
you
should be, it will be. Pre-pandemic, I love that you said that because pre-pandemic, that was my focus to do that. So I had just onboarded a COO. I finally got to that point, right, in my journey as an entrepreneur to then think, okay, I have these 7 locations. We finally, we've stabilized to a point of great profitability. We have a good track record. We have longitudinal data. I can now franchise this model, but I can't do it all by myself. I need a much bigger team. So in February of 2020, I brought on my first COO. So unfortunately, the timing was really bad. And now I'm in an interesting place where we are reopening the brick and mortar locations just as of last month.
hmm,
So this is pretty new. But I also feel like, gosh, so much time has gone past. I think I'd like to accelerate the process and go back to franchising as soon as possible. So we'll probably open maybe another 2 locations, maybe to
hmm.
have 4 total, and then do that once more. I'll also, for the first time, be seeking some outside investment in order to do that. So
Okay, well, one interesting thing you said, all of your uh, teachers or cooks are female.
yes,
What was the rationale behind that?
I
Do
would, yeah. I mean, I can put my feminist hat on but also say that while I really love working with women, and part of my passion for hip cooks in general is to create community, right? When I talked about that high return rate, it wasn't just we don't see our customers as coming in once and thank you and see you later. They want to create community when they come to Hip Cooks. They know that the meal is at a big communal table at the end of class. So they want to get to know other people that they wouldn't have met otherwise, right? We're
hmm,
creating community. They're meeting one another. They're exchanging business cards and phone numbers at the end of class, and gosh, it's so satisfying to be able to offer that. Then we have our assistant community, right? And these are people that are like, oh, I want to be more involved with this business. I love it.
hmm.
Then we have our community of teachers, right? And they're all diverse. But then that small management team, yeah, I get to work with a range of women from different backgrounds and different ages. And yeah, it just personally brings me a lot of joy to create that strong women supported community. I think all of them really enjoy that. So it's not to say would I ever hire a male manager, of course, but it just sort of happened that way, and we all really enjoyed that.
Okay,
So
that's
for me,
very
it's just
interesting.
just another way of creating community, which is one of my passions, and certainly my passion as an entrepreneur.
How much of your budget do you spend on marketing, and what kind of marketing do you do?
Right. Oh gosh, that is for me a very sort of open-ended question, because I would say, if I had to put a monetary term on our actual like spend for marketing, I'd probably probably about hmm, 300 to 500 bucks a month between like paying for our service for uh for distributing newsletters, as well as creating some content, as well as maybe throwing up a Google ad or a Facebook ad every so often. But much more than that, my time is largely creating that content. So whether I'm creating new recipes to put on our blog or beautiful mouth-watering photographs that match those, or if I'm writing a new cookbook, I sort of consider all of that. That sort of all falls for me within a marketing budget.
Hmm.
And that sort of, I don't know if you want to call it like soft marketing. It's again, it's feeding the community, often things that are free, but a
Hmm.
big a big adjective that I use to describe Hipcooks is the value added, right?
Hmm.
So so in that sense, I probably say about 90% of my time is, loosely marketing, right? Because it's sort of supporting that company, our company, with all the materials and ideas and language, and processes that it needs to present its identity.
I mean, it seems like your business could be really, or it would work really well on social media like Instagram or TikTok.
Ah,
Are you leveraging those channels?
absolutely. And better yet, our customers do it for us. So as long as they're are they if they're adding us and they're tagging us, that's great. And they often do. But yes, we do and they do, because you look down and you've created this beautiful risotto. What do
Hmm.
people in today's world do besides
Hmm.
consume it? I mean, they're gonna take a picture of it first, and they're gonna post it, and they're gonna be excited about it, and they want to. And when you make delicious food, you want to share it. And so of course, food translates so well to all the platforms. You see it on there a lot. So personally,
Now,
it's not something that I personally enjoy doing, but,
okay.
and I try to avoid at all costs. So again, I'm pretty lucky that we have a clientele that often will just organically, propel that forward for us. That works
Okay.
well. Yeah.
That definitely works.
Mhm.
Um, Want to talk a little bit about your online platform because I think you mentioned a little bit, where you transitioned from like brick and mortar kind of a business to online, and you're definitely leveraging it. What are some of the things? It seems like you definitely have a website that is your main place where you're creating content and you're driving people to come and setting uh, meetings or appointments and so forth. Is there anything else
I
besides
like
the?
that you think that, because really, one of the issues with having a 17-year-old company is I have a legacy website. It's all custom coded.
Okay.
And therefore, anytime I want to make a change, like say during the pandemic, if I want to pivot somehow seamlessly to brick and mortar to virtual, that is a big undertaking, right? The big barge moves slowly.
Hmm.
So I think a real challenge for me is how to deal with a legacy site as our online savvy. It keeps improving, and there are ways that you can stack. So I'm looking at, like, stack developers where I can
Hmm.
use existing technologies, whereas in the past that all had to be bespoke coded.
Hmm.
So I'm happy that you think hipcooks.com is seamless, because I have a WordPress site that I can maintain easily by myself
Hmm.
and put a lot of things on. Put all of our virtual lives on the WordPress, which is housed by hipcooks.com, which is the legacy behemoth. So I'm really sort of juggling right now between two applications, and at some point that's all going to have to change, and the whole site will have to get rewritten again,
Hmm.
which, as you can imagine, is hundreds of thousands of dollars of investing, be
Yeah.
it because you're coding from scratch, whether I stack technology or not. So interesting. So right now I piggyback a lot of technology. and to make things work for me with this legacy site. So a little, if you're curious what I'm using or what I recommend, I can talk about that a bit later.
So yeah, I mean, you said you're using WordPress, but for your legacy, is it like custom
Oh yeah,
HTML,
that's
JavaScript?
yep,
Is it?
yep. It's Python and Django. It's a custom coded site.
And for your email marketing, do you use some like MailChimp or something, or
I use Active Campaign.
ActiveCampaign? Okay, cool.
For
Very
invoicing,
interesting.
I'm using Wave.
Wave, yeah, Wave is really nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Yet for transactions, I invoice through Wave. For transactions, I use OffNet. I mean, I piggyback and Frankenstein a lot of technologies right now to make it all work.
No, but
Um,
your website, I mean,
I
your
use
website
OffNet
is
for that. I do all my accounting through QuickBooks, and I use QuickBooks Online, and I love that. Um, but no, sorry, you were saying you like the
no,
site?
your website works. I mean,
It sure
it's
does.
working nice.
It has
So
to.
I mean, yeah, as long as it's serving your purpose, I don't think there's any
As
like
long as your perception is for a well-integrated experience and you're not noticing, all then,
exactly, yes.
that's great. It is really coupled together at the moment.
So because you're so experienced in, giving out these parties and so forth, uh, do you have any tips for someone who wants to like use this as a way to, let's say, build their social circle, or
Oh
just
gosh,
just how does one
that's so great.
give great parties? What is your formula of inviting people and entertaining them, and just creating a great time for people?
Yeah, again, I think it's sort of a little bit in the pre-planning and in that, but having a pretty, like, I think, nonchalant attitude towards things. It should be, cooking should be a fun process. It shouldn't be a stressful one. So I think if you really sort of tap into your mood that day and and decide what you're going to make through looking at pictures, or or having a general idea of what you'd like to do, but then not looking at a recipe, because I think that that becomes really stressful in the kitchen if you're sort of going back and forth, like, oh, 2 tablespoons olive oil, 5 tablespoons chopped onion. Like, what is 5 tablespoons chopped onion? I think it's a little bit more of like this process of trusting your intuition and your inner chef, letting that process be creative. And I think inviting your friends, inviting that dinner party into the kitchen to prepare with you is
Hmm.
part of the fun, and then enjoying it together. I think that, cooking is approachable for
Hmm.
many. I think it's their fear that make it not so. And I think particularly in America, where people were not, the way so many of us like grew up as latchkey kids and not a lot of attention to cooking. I think, come to Hipcooks, take 1 or 2 classes, and then you begin to get it. You're like, oh, these are the basics, these are the fundamentals. But again, in our classes, we don't generally measure or follow recipes in the classes, but we
Hmm.
do a lot of tasting along the way, a lot of talking about how to make a dish really sing. And I think once you do that and you combine a social setting and you have fun with it,
Hmm.
then that's part of that process that will encourage you to do more of the same.
I remember, I used to use Airbnb, and this was like before the pandemic. I haven't used it recently. And they
Hmm.
had like this Airbnb, what they call like experiences. And there used to be
Yeah.
like a lot of these kind of classes, cooking and so forth.
Uh-huh.
Have you ever leveraged like platforms like that
No, we
to
were asked
well?
to. It's funny that you say that, and hopefully I'll circle back with Airbnb at some point. I think that is a great experience for someone in town that's willing to travel to the Airbnb or to schedule on a one-by-one basis. HipCooks is a little bit bigger than that, and at the time, the notion of Airbnb did not have the technology to import like our schedule into their platform. And Hipcooks is giving classes, every day of the week, right?
Mm.
Which could be a wonderful experience for Airbnb people. In fact, the savvy ones who look, search what to do in this city in Portland, and I'll say,
Yeah.
go to Hipcooks. So often we'd find people that found us that way. But
Mm.
integrating directly with Airbnb, because it's a wonderful idea, not the first time it's come up, they did not have the technologies to integrate directly with our schedule. And certainly, I know I'm not going to go every day and post our classes to Airbnb
Mm.
and keep a running head count
Yeah.
of what's going back and forth. I mean, so at the time, in my discussions with Airbnb, we put a pin in it
Okay.
for future integrated technologies. But when I think about it, when I listed my house on a site like that, I was able to integrate my schedule with theirs. So maybe that's
Okay.
something that is coming for the future.
Okay. So I read, I believe on one of the websites where you've done another interview, your business is doing significant amount of revenue monthly, I think 6 figures. So it's a pretty decent business. What is your future vision? Are you really a business person who wants to see your business like on a much bigger scale, and you know, or do you want to really keep it as a community vibe, which is small but still
There's no
creates that.
reason why we cannot do both. And I think Hipcooks, wherever it operates, is going to be part of its community. And that's a big part of the company identity. But within that model, I think it lends itself beautifully to franchise. And that would be our scale. And I also think if I can exit the company in 5 to 7 years and potentially provide content for the
Hmm.
company, that would be a wonderful outlet for me. But that would be my plan. Yeah,
So
Hipcook
you
has been, a wonderful baby. It's been really fun to see it from infancy to toddler to, begin to really have legs throughout the country as we've grown our customer base. We've had over 100,000 customers at Hipcook, so that's a
Wow.
lot. And I was just in the process of finishing the second cookbook for Hipcooks when the pandemic hit. So instead of using that as a cookbook, we took all those new recipes and turned them into virtual classes. So that was great. That was lucky to have all that brand new content. But I think now at this point too, as I'm getting closer to retirement age, I think what would be really exciting for me as an entrepreneur would be to franchise and exit.
Okay, cool. And then just travel the world with what you've already been doing, what your passion is.
Well, I've started a software company too.
Okay. Oh, okay.
So maybe I'll
What is
put
that about?
so I think it would be really nice to have a little bit of time to grow that new baby, and then of
Okay.
course travel the world and do lots of hiking and lots more cooking and exploring.
What is the software? Is that also in the cooking space, or that is
It
completely
sure
different?
is. You want to know about it? It's really
Yeah,
fun.
definitely. Yeah,
We're
definitely.
in- we've just created our MVP. And we will be looking, we're just pre-series A basically, but that is within the cooking space. It is a productivity tool
Hmm.
that is a software as a service, and it is for the home chef that is interested in providing meals to their community. And this is something that's mushroomed during the pandemic, but it's
Yeah.
also really a popular model worldwide,
Yeah.
where it's basically neighbors that are in the business of cooking for their neighbors. So
Yeah.
maybe you make fantastic soups.
Hmm.
Maybe your grandmother is so great at making enchiladas and loves to share
Yeah.
them with her neighbors and wants to sell them. So like
Yeah.
these small cottage food, small purveyors. This is a productivity tool for them that gives them a B2C website And then leveraging so many productivity tools that I created for Hipcooks, shopping lists, prep lists, merging recipes together, all of that, how to collate all your orders and how to re-separate them for packaging, all of that kind of stuff has I've spent a lot of time and money looking at developing these systems for Hipcooks, which function really well. So it was a little bit of a pivot, but now we have this really exciting tool for Hip Chefs. So we're onboarding our beta users at the moment, and
That is such an interesting idea, because I know even in Toronto, there's so many people who they call it, I think, tiffin service,
Mhm.
and they will cater to, like, new immigrants or students
Yes.
who don't have time or who don't want to cook. But I would have thought, and please tell me if I would have thought maybe a marketplace to
Well,
connect would be.
well, certainly, I was just about to say, we are so not a marketplace app.
Hmm,
And this is actually remember my philosophy about especially women, but propelling entrepreneurs forward and propelling other women forward. Because generally, this is again a woman-dominated industry, I'd say. But I don't want personally the Uberization of these home chefs to happen through a branded marketplace. I want these chefs to become their own successful micro entrepreneurs and build these micro businesses that they own, that is branded the way they would like.
okay.
I
So
would,
you
yeah,
want to be
I would
so
like
you
to
want
give
to be
them
the
the tools to have greater success than what they could be within the confines of the marketplace app.
so
And that's a
you
big difference.
so you want to be
Yeah, no, and I was gonna say, I like to be a little bit of a revolutionary, and I feel like this product is. Just like Hipcooks, there was nothing that existed out there for, this hungry client that wanted to learn how to cook, but wanted to learn this fun approach to cooking. And I think that really propelled our early success. And now with Hip Chefs as well, there isn't a very affordable tool that these people can use to
hmm.
grow their own businesses. And I think that's really where the motivation is for these people. So I'm really excited for this company.
That's very interesting. So you almost want to be the Shopify for these
That is
customers rather than
absolutely
the
correct.
Amazon or eBay, right?
You got it. You got
But
it.
I thought,
Yes.
but, but I thought maybe creating a marketplace would be a bigger business opportunity, or is there already a
Potentially, and there is, yeah.
platform that connects?
There are some big players within this industry. Last year, they got there's a company called Chef, which is a marketplace app, which got I think 7 million in its first seed round. That's doing well, doing what it's doing, which allows it's great for chefs that want to do proof of concept, that maybe have one or two dishes that they make well and that do not, they don't have direct contact with their customers. So it's fairly limited, right?
Hmm.
Whereas this is a different approach. So this would be for the entrepreneur that is beyond proof of concept, but
Okay.
really wants to grow their business.
So it's
Is
almost
a
like
micro entrepreneur.
it almost becomes like a home-based restaurant. So, the
That's right.
this person already has customers and they want to grow the customers, but they don't want to have a physical location. So, they want
Correct.
to,
Maybe
okay.
someday they will too. Maybe someday they'll grow to that point where they can use a ghost kitchen or they can share the rent of a commercial space. And, Hip Chefs, it can help with all of that. So maybe we need to do a second interview on Hip Chefs. That's fun.
No, it seems like a very, very interesting idea. And yeah, wish you all the best in that. Um, in every entrepreneur's journey, there's always like mistakes made, lessons learned.
Mm.
Um, but looking back at your own journey, could you share maybe, one big mistake, one or two mistakes that come to your mind that looking back, you think, that was a big failure for me, or a learning experience? What did you learn from it? What can other entrepreneurs learn from your mistakes?
Right. Yeah. I wouldn't necessarily call them mistakes. You're right. They're more like learning lessons. And I think when I was younger and perhaps also less risk averse, I grew Hipcooks very organically, location by location. I never took on any debt, any
Hmm.
loans, and I only had one investor, albeit an angel investor, but I only had the one. And I grew slowly. It took me 17 years to get to where I am now. The lessons learned from that, now I can be, I think, a little bit more risky. I think I do have, oh, I mean, I have a proven model, but I can take on loans and investors and other commitments in order to grow the company faster the second go around. And that's what I would like to do.
That's very interesting, because I mean that's one perspective. I guess what you're saying is that even though you had your proof of concept, you were reluctant to take on capital, but
Right.
a lot of the
I just
times,
bootstrapped the whole way, and
okay.
bootstrapped and bootstrapped technology and bootstrapped, so many, my own growth, all these things. But I think for now it's a little bit different because I have a lot of models in place. We have, the content. I have over 50 different classes that we've worked on that work really well. I have a much larger body of work and proof of concept going into it. So, and also, given my age and experience, perhaps I can be a little bit more risk taking with it.
Okay.
So grow
Now,
a little faster.
definitely. Now we're going to move on to our rapid fire segment. And in this segment, I'm going to ask you a few quick questions. If you have to answer them, maybe one word or one sentence.
You got it.
So I'm not going to ask you the book, your favorite book.
I'm a
Um,
doer. I mean, I read for fun. I read fiction. I read a lot, but I don't
okay.
read entrepreneurial books. I feel like you've got it within you or you don't. And in some ways, like, I try to stay away from publications, I think, especially within my industry, so that I'm really able to innovate in a way that is authentic to my vision and also uninfluenced.
That's very interesting. I
Very
mean, you
important.
said either you have it or you don't. Do you really believe that entrepreneurs are born or made? Like a person who does not have who's not the entrepreneurial type. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of
Yep, I do.
examples where there are many successful entrepreneurs who would not be considered like entrepreneurs, but
I do. I think we're a special breed. We can recognize each other, but yeah, there's a certain passion for creation. And like you asked me in the beginning, like, well, do I really love cooking? Yeah, I really love cooking, but I love building and I love creating community. And Hip Cooks inspires me, but so does Hip Chefs. And yeah, I consider myself more as a builder innovator than I do a cook that grew a cooking school.
an innovative product or idea in the current e-commerce, retail, or tech landscape that you feel excited about.
Yeah, I mean, we named a few, but I think especially within the e-commerce site, I think there is some, I have yet to meet it, but I think there's going to be some exciting marketplace technologies for online purchasing of not just goods but services that can be integrated with one's accounting software and website. And I think there's the ability for that to function much more seamlessly, and I
Mhm.
think it will happen soon.
A business or productivity tool or software that you would recommend, or a productivity tip?
Sure. I mean, I think I've mentioned, like, I use Wave, I use ActiveCampaign, I use QuickBooks. I've had a lot of success with WordPress, and it's so inexpensive.
A startup or
Don't be
business.
afraid to piggyback different technologies from different places too. You know, like QuickBooks also does invoicing, but it's not going to look as pretty as a Wave invoice. Similar,
Yeah.
Wave does merchant accounting, but it's not going to be as inexpensive as OffNet or another provider. So don't feel like because you're using one specific technology for something and they have other add-ons that you need to stick with that company and use add-ons. So you've got to keep researching and keep
Yeah.
trying to stay ahead of that game for a better, more efficient product.
See, it's so interesting, just to comment here, is that, many, many, many people build things, or, I think there's a difference between an entrepreneur and someone who's, let's say, is an engineer, right? So an engineer, even though they have all the skills, right, the programming skills, they're not, and it surprises me quite a bit, they're not able to build a business. And it's very surprising to me, because I would think that, an engineer having the coding skills, you have an idea and you can code, and you can test. It's so easy, you can test out different things, but that it's very rare. But when talking to an entrepreneur, like, you're thinking, when you think about technology, and that's the way I think about it also, it's almost like, technology is there to solve a problem. So you're looking at a problem and you're trying to think, what is the tool that can help me solve the problem? And it's almost like coming from an opposite angle. It's like a top-down approach, whereas an engineer thinks from bottom up. And I mean, I've worked with a lot of engineers, and it's almost, yeah. And yeah, and I find it very interesting that a lot of the times engineers, even though they have the skills and the tools, it's very difficult for them to like build an idea and put it in the market, even though it's probably easy for them. A peer entrepreneur or business person whom you look up to, or someone who inspires you.
Yeah, when I think about that, I think about Harold Wusthof, who owns Wusthof Knives. If you love to cook, you might look in your kitchen drawer and see that you have one of his knives in your cabinet. And I think that, this is a privately owned company that's been in the family for 200 years. I mean, talk about a legacy. I got some very good advice from Harold, who became a mentor and a friend, who is the president, the current president of Wusthof Trident, who also said, Monika, you want to, anyone that you work with, from your accountant to your legal team to your teacher that you hire to big or small vendors that you work with, find out why they're doing what they're doing, what their passion is, in one adjective or in one word, what motivates them. And then if that's something that you resonate with, then that's the person for you. Otherwise, it's not. And I've used that philosophy in all areas, and it's never done me wrong. So I appreciate that.
That's
The
great.
other, yeah, and then my co-founder at Hip Chefs, who I love, Jesse Cook, also said, "Oh, Monika, don't let perfection get in the way of progress." And I think maybe again that could also be, we were talking about the bottom up versus the top down approach from the engineer versus the entrepreneur. And I think also, like, this very detail oriented perfectionism from each step in the way can muddy the water. I think that a good approach is to keep moving forward. Don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to learn from your mistakes. Don't be afraid to learn as you go, and sort of work your way to success.
I was going to ask you best business advice, but you already gave a couple. So that's great. Those were all the questions that I had. Was there any question that you would have wished that I asked you that I didn't ask you?
Oh, well, that's an interesting question.
Something
No,
that you would have want to share with entrepreneurs, but maybe I didn't ask you.
yeah, no, I think what I'd like to share with your community is that we're looking here at Hipcooks for staff as we emerge from the pandemic. I'm also looking for a new COO. I'm looking for potential partners and ways to franchise the company. And so I think, opening up that dialogue with other entrepreneurs or interested parties would be great. So
That's awesome. Thank
yeah,
you, Monica. Those were all the questions that I had. Really, really appreciated learning about your story and the way you've grown your business and some of the great things you're doing next. So yeah, thank you so much again for joining me at Trip Talks. Really appreciated your time and for sharing your story.
thank you. Likewise, and I hope you're inspired to follow your inner chef and prepare something delicious tonight.
Definitely. Thank you.
Okay, bye bye.